learning nerds. Before we begin today's show, I want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of this podcast, ADDIE Courses Academy. If you're looking to transition over into the corporate instructional design space, you need the right guidance to do so. And Dr. Sargent and her team have done an incredible job of focusing on what's important to be a corporate instructional designer, like storyboarding, ID models and theories, authoring tools, project management tactics, and more. They even cover how to make your resume and portfolio stand out from the crowd and have an impressive completion rate with their students working at organizations like Google, Salesforce, GM, Uber, Walmart, and Amazon. Also, you won't be going through the learning experience alone. You'll be studying alongside other aspiring instructional designers, as well as working with experienced coaches. And as an added bonus, you'll get a copy of my book at a discount, What I Wish I Knew Before Becoming an Instructional Designer. So check out the industry-recognized program that's showing up in job descriptions as preferred training and education by going to idlecourses.com/academy. Enrollment for IDLE was opened up once again, and this time IDLE now offers something a little bit new. Now they offer different types of memberships as far as for a monthly membership or a yearly membership. So you can pick and choose whatever option works best for you. If you do select the yearly membership, you can use my discount code Luke, and that's going to save you $88 off your enrollment. So once again, a big thank you for IDLE for sponsoring the show, and be sure to check out idlecourses.com/academy. This show is also brought to you by Instructional Design Institute. If you are looking to learn more about instructional design from a higher education perspective, the Institute is for you. This is our 7-week-long instructional design boot camp to be able to teach you about really everything from A to Z as far as from an instructional design, higher education perspective. We're going to be starting off first of talking about with andragogy, how adults learn, to talking about conducting research, to then being able to design learning experiences for everybody, with the end of the 7-week program allowing you to be able to create your own type of learning experience that you can use for a portfolio. You'll also be receiving a free copy of my ebook, What I Wish I Knew Before Becoming an Instructional Designer, as well as is that I will be leaving you feedback on your assignments along with the community, the peer feedback, and of course, I'm going to be hosting weekly live workshops of talking more about the different types of topics for each week. We've had students go through the programs who work at Johns Hopkins University, University of Alabama, Southern New Hampshire University, University of Florida, and many more. So whether you're an aspiring instructional designer and you want to learn more about what it's like to be an instructional designer within a higher education organization, or you are currently an instructional designer and you're looking to be able to get some feedback, some guidance, and being able to go back and transform your learning experiences for your university or your college or your institution, check out Instructional Design Institute. You can go down below inside of the show notes to click on the link, or of course, you can just Google Instructional Design Institute and it's going to pop right up. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free, let me know. I'm more than happy to help you out from there. Okay, now let's start the show. Hello, learning nerds. Welcome on in to the nerdiest podcast you're going to hear today. I'm your host. My name is Luke, but as you probably know me on the internet, my name is Dr. Luke Hobson. I am a senior instructional designer and program manager. I'm an instructor, an author, a blogger, a podcaster, and really just a guy obsessed overall with instructional design. My passion and my purpose is instructional design and designing learning experiences and being able to help you to make those incredible and meaningful learning experiences on your own. And of course, if you want to learn more about myself or the show, head on over to drlukehobson.com. For today's episode, I want to talk about the ADDIE process with you. Now, why ADDIE? And when I think about ADDIE, I think about it as good old ADDIE. ADDIE is the original design process that many, many, many designers and organizations swear by, but it's also created quite the commotion lately within the instructional design space, and some folks having some incredibly strong feelings and emotions questioning the fundamentals of ADDIE, such as, is it a process, a model, a framework? What do we call it? Is it a project management methodology, or is it an instructional design model? Is it still relevant? And the list goes on with different types of questions. Now, of course, I don't have all of the answers, but Here's what I can tell you from using ADDIE over the years. It's commonly used by instructional designers, even if they don't specifically call out the different types of steps. It can be combined with instructional design models. I use backward design in ADDIE all the time. It's a necessary, logical type of thought process of being able to design learning experiences. It's also, right now, if you go and look in LinkedIn jobs and search different types of instructional design jobs, or even just go on Google and search instructional design positions, you're going to see that ADDIE is listed as a preference on probably 95% of job postings. And last but not least, it's extremely misunderstood. And let me unpack that last bullet point real quick for us. If you Google ADDIE right now, you'll often find infographics that can be interpreted as you finish one step and then you move on to the next step. Now, in the real world, that does not work. And of course, let's not forget about the fact that ADDIE was created back in the 1970s. And I think it's safe to say that we have changed from how we have worked from back then. Most folks I know will tell you how ADDIE is not meant to be a linear model. Instead, you are constantly evaluating how the project is progressing and then making tweaks and changes as necessary. While the E in ADDIE stands for evaluation and appears at the end of this type of phrase, you are constantly evaluating everything. This is because things change and people aren't perfect. Shocking. Very shocking news. I know. And I've had my budget cut. I've had SMEs change on projects. I've had the delivery method completely change from it only starting off of being online to then a hybrid course or program, and things kept on changing from there. In reality, I guess you would call it, instead of ADDIE, with it being ADDIE, would be more like AEDEDEIEE, which clearly does not sound good. I don't even know how to say that. And of course, it looks awful. So I keep on mentioning about ADDIE. What does ADDIE actually stand for? It stands for analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation. ADDIE is essentially a simple type of process to follow to help you with staying on track for working on your projects and knowing a little bit more along the way about how do you actually design something with these different types of steps and stages. And it's meant to really help you as far as for figuring out from A to B to C to D and so on and so forth. So let's talk a little bit more about these steps and what they actually mean. The first is analysis. Any great instructional designer will tell you that the very first thing you need to be able to do is analyze the learning needs of the learners. This includes identifying the goals, their current knowledge and skill sets, and the challenges that they face. Analysis is a crucial component of the ADDIE process as it lays out the foundation for everything else that's to come. And during the analysis phase, instructional designers gather and analyze information about the situation, their learners, their needs, the context, more about the organization, and really everything else in between. This information is then used to identify the goals, which guide the design and the development of everything from the different types of materials, the assessments, and all that other good stuff. Conducting a needs assessment is the first step in the right direction when trying to be able to figure this all out. This is when the instructional designer analyzes the current situation in terms of the training, the knowledge gaps, and things like that. And this is when you are putting on your researcher hat and you're asking questions like, what is the point of the course, the training, the program, whatever you're trying to be able to design? Why are we doing it? What type of behavioral changes is our hopeful desire at the end of this? Is the learning product that we're actually making going to help out? What's currently being done or what has been done so far? Who, what, when, where, why, and how are all questions you, of course, should be asking about. And then last but not least, the core of your training plan for everything you're trying to do. How is this going to improve the situation and achieve the business goals through training and through education. Let me give you a little bit of a story here that might help to really emphasize the point about analysis. Years ago, as many of you know, I worked at Southern New Hampshire University, and my title at the time was Creative Resources Manager, and I was one of 4 people who worked on the academic support team. Our mission was to be able to support students with the Writing Center, the Peer Tutoring Center, online learning communities, and really everything else to be able to provide resources and support and guidance for students to help them along their learning journeys. Now, we noticed a problem as we were working through the motions in that we were a newer department within Southern New Hampshire University, and we weren't being used as much as we thought about, which we thought was kind of interesting. And this led to the question of, well, why? Why aren't more students coming to us? What's really the problem? Is it potentially the fact that our products and services, maybe they're not that great, and maybe that's the issue? Or is it something different as far as for how are students actually finding us? Is it that kind of a problem? So we went on this mission to be able to figure out these different necessary steps, and we began by doing research and talking with everybody, essentially within the university, anybody who works with students or within the courses, and just asking them some basic questions about, hey, if a student is having problems within this writing class, where do you recommend for them to go and to get more help? Or if they're in the class and it's like midnight, they can't talk to anybody, is there a certain section that they go into? Is there a certain module? And of course, talking with academic advisors who would literally speak with students on the phone and saying, hey, if a student is calling in and they have questions about this or this, where do you send them? What's your process like? And as we began to talk to people, sit inside of team meetings and do these one-on-one consultations with deans and vice presidents and everything else, that's when we realized there was a problem. And the problem was the fact that no one knew that we existed. Everything that we kept on hearing about, as far as for where do you direct students to go to get help with writing or peer tutoring or communities or anything like that, it was never us. Instead, it was either a different resource, something older. Sometimes people just didn't have a clear depiction about, I don't know, I say this or this, but maybe there's something better. I was like, oh, okay. So our problem is not the fact that our products and our services weren't great. The problem was the fact that we essentially had a marketing problem. We needed to spread the word about what we do, who we are, and how to get people to know more about us, to get that buy-in, and to essentially create this behavioral change that when a student has an issue in the variety of areas that we cover, that the person who is talking with the student knows to send them to us, and we had to change that. So that was everything we learned about from an analysis phase, if you will, to then determine what we were going to do next. And as you can probably piece together, if we did not do that, if we did not do that simple, no, actually, it wasn't really that simple. It took quite a bit of time. But if we did not do those things, then we could have just been making illogical assumptions about what to do. And maybe we would have just started to make courses to make people go through things to learn more about us, or different types of trainings, or different types of things of that nature, when really it was just like, no, we need to approach this from several different ways to get to people to know more about us, and to try to figure out what is really going to be the best way of spreading the word around who we are and what is it that we do. And that's why, as I mentioned before, that the analysis portion of trying to use ADDIE is so crucial, because without that step, you are essentially guessing, and then potentially you're going to have to do things over again because maybe it's not going to work the first time, which is honestly something that does happen quite often. Our next step after this is design. And this is when you are designing the overall learning experience. This is when you're creating the blueprint for what the course, the training, the program, whatever it is, what it's really going to look like and what it's going to feel like. You can divide this into 3 main elements. And what I will say to this is that these 3 are the learning environment, How will the course, training, program, workshop, whatever, how is it actually going to take place? Is it going to be face-to-face, online, hybrid, things of that nature? Then figuring out the learning objectives. What learners are expected to achieve as a result of the instruction, as a result of the learning product. And then the learning strategies, assessments, activities that are going to be used during the course of a training that's really going to be engaging and meaningful to students and learners and to make them think more about the subject matter. And how are you going to do this? Peer review-based assignments, scenario-based learning, project-based learning, gamification, simulations, narratives, everything else. There's so many ways to do this. What are you going to do to make this really meaningful? When you put those together, you essentially have a blueprint about what your product is going to look like. Then comes the development step or stage, and this is to actually build the learning experience that you just envisioned. From what you create on the blueprint, now is the time to put that plan in place. And this is when you transform those ideas and those designs into a tangible thing, into an actual real product. So in this phase, you take the assessments and the activities and the content that you mapped out, and now you're actually building them and you're adding details to them and trying to put different types of things around them to make them feel supported. And all of these elements will be used to facilitate learning. And during this type of a development phase, the designer has the opportunity to test and to refine everything that they made to ensure that indeed it is what they were hoping things are actually going to look, feel like, and be responsive for. So essentially, it's the development phase. You can call it the building phase, whatever. But that's really what you're doing, is that you're putting everything actually together. So think of the first, let's talk about if you wanted to be able to design and build a new home. I've been watching a lot of HGTV lately and a whole bunch of home shows on Netflix. So this is kind of on my brain right now. So think about the first phases as in terms of building a new house. The analysis phase is when the developers realize there is a business opportunity and they begin scouting the area to look for pieces of land to be able to build a new house on. The design phase is when the blueprints and the drawings are created by the architects for what the home is exactly going to look like. The development phase is when the construction crew goes to the site and physically begins to build the house. That's so far the A, the D, and the D. And as you can imagine, the development phase is important because it's going to set the foundation for everything else that's to come with the implementation phase, the evaluation phase, and overall the success about everything. Without a well-constructed and built type of learning experience or learning product, well, then things are going to fall to the wayside and you're not going to actually hit the goals that you were hoping the students and that the learners are going to be able to achieve. The next step is implementation. And this is when you are launching the learning experience or the product. This stage involves delivering the instructional content to the target audience, ensuring that the learning materials are being used correctly, and ensuring that the learning environment is supportive and conducive to learning. Essentially, this is when your course, your program, your training, this is when this thing goes live and people are actually taking it. Now, depending upon the circumstances, this is usually when you're going to hear about a topic that is called training the trainer or train the trainer, where you are trying to make sure that whoever is running the show knows what to do and knows what to actually do for every single different type of step involving with teaching, with coaching, with feedback, facilitating, and whatever it is. So from a higher education perspective, you can think about this when adjunct instructors go through a type of an onboarding process and a training process about how to teach, about what the university is looking for with their own types of guidelines, how to use the learning platform, how to give feedback. That's that from that perspective. And of course, the students are having their own type of preparation with their own onboarding process. Maybe it's a week 0. Maybe it's taking a course about how to be a good online student, which is a very normal part of online learning experiences. The same thing can be said, though, from a corporate perspective, with the trainer needing to have a solid understanding of the learning materials, going through everything, and then also, once again, making sure that the employees, that the learners, participants, whatever you want to be able to call them, they know what's expected of them. They know what's going to be a part of this training and that they are not going to be absolutely blindsided by something that they have never heard about before and they don't know what this actually is. So everyone needs to be aware about what's expected of them, what's to come, how is this really going to work? Effective implementation is essential for ensuring that the goals, the outcomes, the objectives, and that everything is going to be met for evaluating the effectiveness of the course, the training, the program, and really trying to be able to overall achieve the different types of desired results. The implementation stage also allows for continuous improvement as feedback and results from the evaluation stage are going to be refined and improved for every single time and every single iteration and every single run. And then last but not least, and also not really last in the way that you know about this from what I explained earlier on, is evaluation. Evaluation comes from every different type of angle and step and whatnot, but if we're going through the actual phrase of ADDIE, evaluation is at the end, and this is when you are evaluating the learning experience, the learning product, whatever you're working on. You're evaluating every single thing, meaning the learning materials, the distribution, the training. How did everything really go? And this is when you are testing and assessing to determine about the effectiveness, too, of the content, the activities, the assessments. Did this actually meet the learning objectives and the learning outcomes? Did this meet the overall needs of the learners, the stakeholders, the organization, everyone involved? The evaluation process can involve various methods, by the way, of how you're trying to go about with doing this, as far as with formative evaluations, summative evaluations, qualitative, quantitative measurements, whatever works for you. This all very much depends upon the circumstances, the time, the energy, the budget, the people power, many things like that. So this could involve surveys, testing, observations, and quite a few other different types of tactics. In the evaluation phase, this is what I want you to be able to think about with these different types of questions. Did the learning experience, the learning product, did it actually achieve the desired results, the desired learning objectives? Were the materials relevant, engaging, meaningful, and effective for the target audience? Did the learning experience meet the needs and expectations of the stakeholders and the organization? Were there any challenges or limitations in how everything was delivered as far as for the assessments, the activities, the trainings, everything of a sort? And how can the instructional materials be improved for future use for the next run and the next and the next? By thoroughly evaluating the learning product, the experience, this type of an ADDIE process ensures that the end product is effective and meets the needs of the intended target audience. Now, once again, just to really make sure I'm driving this point home, this is not a linear process. Every designer seems to have their own take on ADDIE, but the above steps are the basic. I'm also attempting to summarize ADDIE when it has such a vast history. Like I said, this comes from the 1970s. Many iterations have gone through with ADDIE. People use things in their own different types of ways. But overall, once again, you are not starting with doing only analysis, and then once it's perfect, then you move to design. And then once design's perfect, you move on to that's not how it works in the real world. You're constantly improving, iterating, getting new feedback, evaluating things, applying those changes, and you keep on going again and again and again until eventually you do have a type of a final product. You'll hear, of course, some horror stories from different types of organizations too that talk about essentially how they remove the A and D in ADDIE and they just leave their products to die. And Dr. Carl Kopp from Bloomsburg University told me that joke on the podcast before. And it's so true that I've heard from many people about how they're expected to make a product essentially yesterday, and that an organization does not want to dedicate enough time and energy and resources into doing things right the first time. And as you very well know, that's not the best way about how to do things. Now, I don't want to scare you, of course, by any means. Not every organization is like this. And also, I've had the opposite problem in my line of work. Once again, I'm in higher education. And with some of the projects that I've worked on before, we take so long with conducting research, with figuring out, is this going to be the right product to serve our target audience? Is this the right timing to do this? And what should we do for blah, blah, blah? That eventually is that paralysis by analysis. And we don't launch the project soon enough or in time. And instead, you're like, oh, it's too late. We missed our opportunity to really do this. And then now we have to go back to the drawing board. So it's entirely 100% possible that you might either take too long or you don't get enough time and you're trying to get things to balance them out. Usually, though, you can actually go through these different types of steps and channels in order to make this happen. What I do like about ADDIE that I don't think gets enough attention nowadays, as many people talking about ADDIE, is that it really much does feel like it's kind of common sense. Every step is rather logical. It really doesn't feel that out of place. I would hope that if you come across a problem, you do your research to figure out what exactly you're going to do to solve the problem. And then the next logical step would then be, okay, here's the problem. We're going to solve this at training and education. Well, what does the solution look like? We should design this. And you kind of keep on going through the motions. It's a logical thought process that I feel like we don't keep on talking about those basics and fundamentals anymore. And oftentimes, and once again, too, this is not a one-size-fits-all model. There are different types of approaches, by all means. And like I said before at the beginning of this entire episode, some people don't call it a model. They call it a process. As you've heard me throughout this entire episode, I call it a process because I have combined ADDIE with different types of instructional design models. So it is not uncommon to hear that somebody practices backward design or SAM or something different, and they also use a bit of here and there of ADDIE at the same time. It's a very normal thing. And if you're wondering why on instructional design job postings that you might see perhaps ADDIE being called out on its own and then an instructional design model is listed below, that's usually why. Most likely the organization has some type of combination or a set or things of that nature. But overall, folks, it is never a bad idea to go back to the basics to figure out more about how to design a learning product effectively and to check out everything from this type of an ADDIE process perspective. If you would like to take a very deep dive into ADDIE, by the way, you can check out the book on Amazon by Robert Branch, which is called Instructional Design, the ADDIE Approach. I will tell you right away that it is a rather lengthier book, I guess I'll say, about ADDIE. I was able to just summarize ADDIE for you in under 30 minutes. This is obviously going to take you longer than 30 minutes to be able to use. It does have some helpful types of templates and guides for you to be able to follow. So this is the book that I do recommend to my students at the University of Miami. So if you want to be able to check out that, you can. I'm going to put a link down below inside of the show notes for you to be able to use that. That's also my affiliate link for Amazon. So if you do purchase through that link, I thank you very much because that helps me to keep the lights on around here. And one last note about that book too is that it does have a section in there talking about learning styles. Just so that way you are aware, that is in there. Learning styles have widely been disproven and debunked for years. I don't know why we still keep on talking about this, but this is a thing. So anyway, just want to make sure you're aware about that part of the book. And if you are a current instructional designer, I would love to hear from you. Tell me, share this podcast episode online, and how are you currently using the ADDIE process in your line of work? Of course, if you do find this episode helpful, be sure to share it with a friend, your network, your colleagues, and to learn a little bit more about the ADDIE process, at least from my perspective. I'm sure some people are going to have some disagreements with me, but overall, this is how I have used ADDIE over the years, and it's how I teach about it to my students as well. But hey, folks, if you like the show, don't forget to like, subscribe, and to leave a rating wherever you are listening. I am not picky. And once again, thank you for being here. Thank you for nerding out with me and talking a little bit more about ADDIE. And the one final thing I will tell you to be on the lookout about, I posted about this the other day on LinkedIn, was that I accidentally wrote a new book. I'm not really too sure about how this kind of happened. I was writing a new blog post because the number one question that you folks ask me, hands down, the number one question is like, Luke, here's my entire life story. Where do I start? How do I begin about instructional design and this journey? What do I do? Where do I go? What do you recommend? All those different types of questions that really focus around like, how do you start to learn about instructional design is that type of question. So I started to write essentially a very long blog post with all my recommendations about how do you actually study to learn a new skill, which is not talked about enough nowadays. If you're transitioning into a new career field and you need to do some professional development and some trainings and some courses and, all of that good stuff, well, how do you properly learn? So that's the first part about the blog. And of course, there are different pathways of doing so. You can entirely do it on your own. There's like a free version, if you will, to become an instructional designer. And of course, there are paid versions and a variety of things in the middle about how do you actually go about with doing this. So I started to just write down as many resources and recommendations as I possibly could. 1 page turned to 2, 2 pages turned to 10, and then now it's up to 70 pages. And I'm like, okay. Now what? So I'm still going to make this a blog post. It's going to be the longest blog post I have ever written, and hopefully I will never write another blog post that is so long, but it's not meant to be read in one sitting. It is meant to be more about something you can bookmark and you can then go back to and make sure that you have a reference for things. I want you to use it in that way instead. But at the same time, a few more pages here and there, a few more recommendations, and it's another book. So to be determined about what I'm going to do with that as far as for making it a book. But that is something you should be looking out for. I hope to release this within the next couple of weeks. I am literally working on it in real time to try to be able to finish this thing up. But my learning nerds, that is everything that I do have for you. Once again, be sure to check out Instructional Design Institute. Our next cohort starts on August 28th. Looking forward to being able to nerd out and to work with you if all of that does sound good to you. But folks, that's it. That's all I have for you today. So most importantly, stay nerdy out there. Talk to you next time.